we hack the code and flip the tag. Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, make fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet. Hey.
Hello and welcome to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom. I'm your host, Kim Miller-Hershon. I am so happy to welcome Lara Hamilton today. And let me tell you a little bit about her before we get too far into this. Lara is an IT and compliance leader specializing in multifamily and affordable housing industry. She helps property management orgs build secure, reliable technology environments that support growth while making everyday operations simpler. With expertise in platforms like Yardi, RealPage, and AMSI, Lara is passionate about translating complex topics like cybersecurity into practical, actionable solutions. And the last thing I'm going to say about her is she also believes that technology can really empower people as opposed to making things more complicated. So, Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Good. Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation today. And so, your random question, which maybe not quite so random, is tell me a little bit about what it was like for you to be an at-home mom and then transition into the workforce.
That would be a difficult transition. But I was very active in my children's school and I was a PTA president. It was a unpaid job, full-time job. So it wasn't that hard to transition into a regular job in the IT industry. It was slower paced actually than what I was used to. Because when you're a stay-at-home mom and you're active in activities with your kids, that's a job that never goes away. So you're on all day long, all night.
Right.
So it was
Uh-huh.
almost a break to a degree.
So let me ask you this, though. Is that how much difficulty or ease did you have convincing, like getting interviews or convincing an employer to that you had the skills when you didn't have the direct experience?
Well, I want to make it clear. I started out at the very bottom. It was very low level, working in an operational department of a bank, doing wire transfers. It was not glamorous. It wasn't, do they believe in me? It was the lowest paying thing at the place I was at.
It's so interesting because I also was a stay-at-home mom that made the transition back into the workforce. Now, I think there's two things that I would say about my experience. One is that I'm just old. Okay. And having the same experience of you in terms of being PTA president, right? Doing all these volunteer activities. And what I always like to say is that you want to know who a good leader is, you hire somebody who has been in charge of major, for instance, like fundraising, right?
Yeah. Yes.
With volunteers that they can't fire, right? Now you know what a good leader looks like. But I would say at the time, I had a very hard time translating that experience into a resume, right? That somebody
Right.
would be like, oh, yeah, she has experience that we value.
I get that. It is difficult, but for me, I looked at it like a business. I looked at the PTA job that I had as a business. I was running $1 million business and we had to bring those funds in within a 6 weeks time frame. So when you're trying to raise a specific amount in a very short time frame, and if you multiplied that 6 weeks times a year, that really is over $1 million business that you're running, and you're running it with people that you're not paying. And so you have to not only believe in those people, but they have to believe in your vision
Right.
for the
Oh,
school.
Laura, trust me. I 100% like I'm right there with you in terms
Right.
of your skill and expertise. I think my issue was more finding an employer that would value that experience, right? Not I knew I was qualified. Now, okay, so I'm going to admit to something here on the air that you really brought up for me when you said like you took a lower level job. I actually have two master's degrees. Okay? And I wasn't going back into the field that I had the my degrees in. I will say that I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder around what I would apply for and what I would take, right? Because
Right.
I looked at myself and I'm like a highly educated individual that has all this volunteer experience and that plus I had some job experience, but it was just a long time ago. It was like that should add up to something substantial, right? But I also, yeah, I don't think I did a terribly good job at figuring that out for myself. I think also too, women today have, or even stay-at-home dads, I think they have some better resources and maybe some more opportunity, I think, than I at least felt like I had at the time. But
I would agree with that. Yeah. For
yeah.
sure. I feel like for myself, the thing is get yourself in the door. There was a company at the time I really wanted to work for. So it was get yourself in the door and then worry about what you qualify for later. And that's part of it. If you really value a company that you want to be with, then sometimes that's what you have to do.
And anybody who's listened to my story knows that I think I was just never meant to be an employee. I think that's like
Right.
bottom line. I look at it and I would look at my experience saying, oh, I kind of took the job that somebody was actually willing to give me, right? Because I didn't want to go. I probably could have gotten a higher level job if I was willing to go back into the field in which I was trained, but I didn't want to do that. So I look at my experience, which I think is something we all do, right? You look at your own experience and you're be like, that's the reason that happened, right? But
Right.
here's the thing, it probably doesn't even matter what job it was. I probably was never going to be successful doing it because I think I am just not wired that way.
And that's totally understandable for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Took me a long time though to get there. And I want to go on to the questions, but I do want to put this message out in the world is that I had a lot of shame and a lot of felt a lot of vulnerability around my inability to move up in a job, to stay in a job for a long time. I actually got fired from that first job, right? That was a
Wow.
first. And it's very interesting because it took me a really long time to get to the place of you're not a good employee because you're not really built to be one, right?
Yeah, it's hard to come to that realization if that's who you are. It's also difficult when you're in a situation that you're unhappy with to say, okay, this is my environment right now, but this isn't where I'm meant to be. And to make a change is very difficult. But
That's right.
trust that inner voice, trust that instinct that you have, because that's yourself telling you, hey, let's do
Right.
something different. Let's go a different direction.
Or if you're like me and you can't do it for yourself, then the universe tends to do it for you.
It
Um,
does.
and it's always painful, right?
Yes,
But it's also growth,
it
right?
really is.
Yeah.
It certainly is growth for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. All right. So let's go on to now you've been in the business world, the leadership world for quite a while. So, what is one piece of business wisdom, conventional wisdom that you followed or early on or thought like, oh, this is the road to success, right? Only to really find out that it actually did not work for you.
So I think it's back to what you talked about, that those instincts that you have and that you're trying to go against your natural instinct. And for me, it was to make yourself indispensable. Making yourself indispensable does not always work, right? Because you need to be invaluable. What I did was make the job that I was in at the bank, at the wire transfer desk, more efficient. And by doing that, I eliminated my own job. Instead of letting me go, they saw the value in what I did and they put me in other positions across the company so that I could then make the other departments more efficient. And it led to where I am today. So I think the thing that I was only taught and was made to believe this was the way to do it is make yourself indispensable. If you're the only one that can do it, nobody can take your job. That's not true. You're holding back the company, you're holding back growth. So don't do that. Make it where you are an invaluable employee to that company.
Oh my God, I love that. First of all, love that. Second of all, I think what really comes to mind for me is, and this is such an important point. So you do what you did, right?
Right.
Be efficient enough that you eliminate your own job, and it could have had a different ending, right? And I'm sure that
Yes.
there are listeners out there who are like, I did that and I got laid off. But here is, I think, the key. The key is that know what your employer values,
Right.
right? It's not what you value in your own little silo, but it's like, what are the priorities of leadership, right? And then when you bring the value, it's a no-brainer, right? To then
Yes.
and what's interesting too about what you're saying is that if you make yourself indispensable, you create a huge problem for the business, right?
Correct. That's correct. If you are constantly the only person that someone can go to for help, then you're creating obstacles for your other employees for whatever it is. Because what if you take a vacation? What if you get sick? We all think they can't live without us. The reality is they can. It's not about being able to live without you. It's do you bring value to what you're doing?
Right.
Are you improving the processes? Are you improving things? And you have to be able to bend in the wind, right?
There you go. And you know what? The other thing that leaders often do is in when they're in high leaders, right? So here's what's so interesting about what you're saying is that how many business owners do the exact same thing? They are the keeper of the knowledge and they make themselves indispensable, right?
Right.
And so what ends up happening is they have the experience of I go on vacation and I'm working, right? I'm looking at the Mona Lisa and I'm checking my email, right?
That's
And so I think that it's a really interesting question to ask yourself. Have I made myself indispensable versus adding value?
right.
And then how do I change that?
Yes,
Right.
and as a leader in that type of role, if you are indispensable, if you are they can't live without me, my team can't handle it, then you're not growing your team and you don't have anyone that can go into slide into your position.
That's right.
My job is to have someone that can take my job. I
Right.
can't move up in the company unless they can move up in the company.
Although I am going to say that it takes a pretty healthy sense of self in order to make that happen. And I
Yes.
think a lot of people, even without really consciously doing it or knowing it, it's very delicious to be the one that everybody comes to, right? To be the
Yes.
expert, right? And I think that it's such a healthy way to think about things, right? Not only can you not move up in the company, but just again, if you own the company and you are the keeper of all the information, nobody else can do the parts that really you could train somebody else to do. You just haven't. I think you really do create a situation where you, as a leader, you just hit the nail on the head. You don't grow, right?
Right.
You're
That's right.
busy, you're indispensable, but you actually are not growing your own skill level, right?
And I look at that as it's white noise, right? When you're so busy that you can't really get things done, that's just a bunch of white noise. It's task driven instead of productive driven.
Oh, oh my God, you are just dropping wisdom bombs here. I love this. All right. So give us some more of the down and dirty here, right? So, as a successful leader, what's one thing that people just assume you've got this nailed? And inside you're like, do I?
I think that we've touched on that a little bit already, and that is that people assume that I have the work life balance figured out. And the truth is, I'm still learning how to create space between solving problems and carrying them home and allowing other people to take those tasks on for me when I'm not
Right.
available. And so it is always something that you're growing and learning from. It's not always easy to say, let's let someone else handle it. Someone else may not do it as quickly as you do it. Someone
Right.
else you may be able to do it in 5 minutes, but that's not always the right answer. And so finding that boundary is something that I still work on.
And I think the other piece of that is doing, does it really need to be done the same way that you would do it?
Right.
Or is somebody else's process or outcome an acceptable, I guess, outcome, right?
And some people will come up with a better outcome. So
Right,
there are these, if you don't give people the ability to use their own skills, their own instincts, then you never really learn and grow yourself
right.
because you're always thinking singular of what this is how I would do it.
And I think about this a lot because I really think about, I hear a lot in my professional community people saying the equivalent of, I am the smartest person in the room. In some areas, I think that is probably true, but I just sometimes question how that serves. How does that actually serve you and the organization if you always feel like you are the only person with the right answer, right?
Right. If you hear me say I'm the smartest person in the room, that means I'm in the wrong room.
Ooh, say more.
I feel when I hire employees to work in my department, we are hiring people that have other skills and knowledge that I do not have. I need
Right,
people to be smarter than me to be able to bring what they have to the table.
right,
And if I'm always the smartest person in the room, then we're never really collaborating and coming up with real solutions.
right. Right. So I would agree with you when you need other expertise, right? But it's easier to, I think, be open to that. I think the place as a business coach, what I see is hard for people is the people who you're training to do your job, right? Your second in command, or somebody who's working on a project that you're doing that you've delegated to. And I often hear they have to do it how I would do it,
Right.
right? And I think that feels complicated to me. It does not feel as straightforward as that sentence is. Because on the one hand, there are certain things that, if you're filing a legal brief, right? If you're working on a protocol, like sometimes there is a right answer,
That's
right?
true. Yes, very true. So my outlook on that is so there are times when, and I'll use a process in a software, there are correct answers of how you do a process in a software. How you get to that point sometimes can vary. And is this process and what we've put in place the right process? And yes, people need to know how I do a process so that they can then have critical thinking on have you thought of this? What about this? And those in IT, it's just so critical to us. So I don't need a bunch of yes people that are going to just do it my way and never look outside the box.
Right.
I need people that are going to question not necessarily how I do the process, but understand how I do it and then can bring something to the table themselves.
Right. Right, right, right. And again, I just want to reiterate that I think you really have to be able to put your ego aside. I think walking in to the quote unquote room with the idea that everybody has to do things the way you do it and the way you see it is, I think, sometimes detrimental to getting the best outcome. And I often hear people say, and business coaches are famous for doing this, saying if somebody could do it 80%, right, of as good as you can do it, is that good enough? And I'm not sure why, Laura. There's something about that that concept just irritates me.
Yeah,
It just does, right? I think you're creating a hierarchy and a dichotomy that just doesn't, I don't know, it feels, might I say, it feels almost disrespectful,
condescending maybe.
condescending. There you go.
And
That's
I,
right.
I don't disagree with you. So my team, we work in a very collaborative way. Now, at the end of the day, I have to be responsible for what we do because I am the leader of our department. Somebody has to answer for whatever decisions we make.
That's
But
right.
as the face of that, that's one thing. But that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of people behind me that are supporting me and helping me. And we might have debates on what about this? Have you thought of this? And that's healthy debate.
Right.
It's really important, though, as a leader, that you allow your employees to do that so that they can grow and learn. And you want that critical thinking in your company. You want that, right?
That's right.
Otherwise, you can't really evolve and especially in IT, it's changing so much on a daily basis.
Isn't that the truth? And then I think the best leaders have those conversations. And listen, you can't debate every single decision,
Right.
right?
That's
There's a
right.
time that it's just, I hear
We
you, and we'll evaluate that later. But right now, we've got a deadline. We've just got to get it done,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah,
Um,
there are times when you have to say, "Okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm listening to you, but this is the way that we are going to do this because this is how it has to be done as it's the best overall. It may not be the best in this one situation, but as a collective group, this is the best overall."
right.
And that happens.
That's right. And you know what? I think really at the end of the day, people just want to be listened to, right?
Yes.
So your ability to be able to say, I hear you, I'm acknowledging your idea. This is the reason why we're going to do this, should get you buy in
That's
for
right.
doing it. And if it doesn't, that's a whole different conversation, right? But I think taking the time to say, I hear you is huge.
It is. It goes a long way with your team. And for me, I've developed a team of people that we all leave our egos at the door because we all understand that we all have different strengths, different weaknesses,
Uh
and
huh.
we are bringing different things to the table. So we listen. And then if it doesn't work, if this isn't okay, have we thought of this? It's not about whose idea is, it's about what's the best as a group we can get these processes done. How can we better serve this person, this client, this team of people, whatever it is, and
Right.
get the job done to where it works out for everyone.
And you know what's very funny? I would say I have a little bit different as a leader of my company. Here's the thing, I don't have ego about everything. I have ego about some things, but here's the thing, I own it, right? I own
Right.
it. I name it. I'm
Yeah,
like,
you have to, right? You have to.
right.
There are going to be times when you have to say, "Hold on, mine was really the better idea. This is
Yeah,
really the way we need to do it." Or this is the vision I have for this. How can we accomplish this vision? And
right.
even if someone else has a different idea, okay, but that's not what we're really doing. This is what we're doing,
Yeah,
and bringing it back to the
yeah,
circle. But
yeah,
it's there's going to be egos. There's times when that happens, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to
right.
help people. And so that's really at the end of the day.
Right. And I think there's two things that I do that my team has pointed out to me that they really appreciate. One is that I just own my stuff, right? I just do, right? I am a deeply flawed individual like we all are, right? And I own who I am, right? It's
Right.
taken me a lot of years to get there and have the confidence, and if I mess up, I say I mess up, I apologize. But here's the other thing that I do, I think consciously, and my team has said is very meaningful, is that I also call out when they do things well. and I tell them why I think it was extraordinary, right? I think after a while, just saying, atta girl, atta boy becomes a little meaningless, right?
Yes. Yes. If it has no purpose behind it, it is meaningless. And I think that people do want to hear that they're doing a good job. That's just everybody wants to hear that, right?
Right.
But I think what you said was super important, that you own up when you make a mistake. And I think that a lot of leaders fall into, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. And you have to be willing to be somewhat vulnerable sometimes. And it's difficult to do that when you're in a leadership position because you
Yeah.
don't want them to question your authority. And so there is a very fine line on that. But I do think it is important that they see and understand that, hey, it's not about always being on the defense. It's about saying, okay, yeah, you're right. I made that mistake. How can we prevent that from happening again?
Yeah. Where do we go from here? Right. All right. So, what's your biggest leadership or management issue right now, challenge right now?
Our biggest challenge right now is I face is a balance, speed, depth, certainty. If I answer something too quickly, I can oversimplify a complex issue. If I include every nuance, the answer becomes overwhelming, or it can seem like, especially in our environment, that you're trying to sound smarter or overtalk the other person. And so, in uncertainty or changing, I need to be clear about what I know, what I don't know, and then within the checking the source and all of that.
And also, too, one of the things that I always recommend that people do, putting on my coaching hat for a quick second here, is that it's always super helpful when you're responding to somebody else on your team, or especially a client, right? Which
Yep.
is to really pay attention to their communication. Pay attention to how they write emails, how they
Yes.
talk, right? Are they a bullet point kind of person when they talk? If you give that person a ton of details, if you give them a 5 paragraph email that is just text, I will tell you they are not reading it, period.
Oh,
Right?
yeah. Oh, listen, my biggest pet peeve is sending me a book of information that is overwhelming. We're an instant gratification society now, and we want bullet points, we want facts, we don't want all this extra
Right.
stuff. And we can all fall into that trap of over complicating words in emails or
Mhm.
in Teams chats or whatever it is. My biggest problem isn't solving technical problems anymore. It's deciding which problems deserve my attention.
Ooh. Okay. Wow. Is that a nugget? 100%. And you know what's super interesting about that is that comes up in coaching all the time, which is I check my email all the time. So I am constantly responding, and then I'm checking Slack or Teams or
Yes, it's
Discord,
constant all the time going on.
right?
Yes,
But it's react, 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 react. And it's exactly what you're saying. What what problems actually need solving? Here's the other thing. Somebody else's emergency is not necessarily your urgency,
that's very true. Very true.
right?
Now, in my case, it somebody else's emergency is my emergency in IT, but I do have, like, just while we're talking right now, my phone is going off and my emails are going off and my Teams chat is going off. So all these things are happening around me, and I'm trying to stay focused on what's really important right now, which is my conversation with you. I stopped trying to prove my value by having all the answers. Instead, I started trying to prove my value by making other people more successful. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is step back a little bit and let my team do what they're meant to do.
Right. That is actually something that I'm working on it, but I think it probably needs more of my attention, which is taking the time to not answer the question, right?
Yep.
And allowing somebody else to figure it out, allowing somebody else to take a stab at the answer. And again, it's funny when I talked about, oh, actually, I guess I talked about this with one of my team recently, is that For those of us whose brain and physically just move fast, right?
Yes,
I talk fast, I move fast, I gesture a lot, right? And really allowing other people to process however long it takes them to process things, right? And not having judgment about that.
that's
That's
right.
the hard part.
Yep. Don't build dependence, build capability.
There you go. Love that. All right. What's one unconventional habit or mindset shift that's helped you grow to be a department head, right? From being a wire transfer person.
I think hard work really helped me a lot. When I was young, people would call women or young ladies, they would call them bossy or stubborn or words like that. And I don't look at people like that anymore. I think about them as opportunists, people that can see something that needs to be changed and to be willing to take the chance. As innovators, people that are willing to step into a different environment. There might be unknown factors. So I look at the world differently now. For me, I really had to push through a lot of things that I didn't know. I didn't know how to do a lot of things that other people went to school to learn. And so it was just really using that instinct to push myself to not let the system win, not let the process win. And it sounds that's really stubborn, and it was, but it was also very important for me to push through situations that might have been really difficult for me at the time, and I could have
Right.
given up, and I didn't.
Right. I mean, I agree. I think the reason why you're successful at a corporate job and I never was is that I don't want to say I wrongly, but I think I was like, this doesn't make sense. We should change this. And I got a lot of either not listening or saying yes and not changing because the orgs that I were in were not fast change orgs, right?
Right.
And it's funny because at the time, of course, this isn't how I looked at it. But as I look at it now, like I really got on my high horse, right? This isn't right, like righteous
Yeah.
indignation, right? And I just couldn't let it go and put my head down and just do my darn job, right? I
But
might have fired me too.
that made you successful in who you are today. So I don't mean that as a right or wrong way. There are different ways to the same path or to similar paths. For me, I had to learn all of the details in IT, all of the processes, how you do this, what to look for, the project management side of it. There's so many layers to it.
Right,
And trial and error and understanding, okay, if you've got someone that makes a mistake, instead of jumping down, oh, you made a mistake, you did this, you did that. It's okay, what do we need to do to fix the mistake? Then let's talk about what we can do to prevent the mistake and let's
right,
do it together. And so embracing that mentality for yourself also because you are the same as the next guy and you have to learn to forgive yourself a little bit too. You're not going to always do everything right.
right. So, Laura, here's a really interesting thought. Okay. And I literally was just thinking about this earlier this morning is that I think those of us who have more experience and are better at good at a lot of things at this point because we've just been doing it for a long time. My advice to anybody who is listening who is in that position, go out and do something new that you're really bad at,
Yes.
right? Because I think we forget what it's like to be a beginner. Like an employee makes a mistake 2 times and you're like, I told you how to do it. Why didn't you do it right?
Yes.
Go out and learn something new, and then you will have so much more understanding and empathy for what it's like to be a beginner at this world of work, right?
Yes. I'm very fortunate in my industry that it is changing so frequently and so much over time. It hasn't been that long ago that I did something new just with AI or things like that that come
Right,
up. And learning something new is a constant for us. And so if you're not
right,
willing to adapt and learn and dig in and change with the wind to a degree or with whatever's popular right now, and then also how to mitigate that, then you're not going to be successful in this industry because the one thing you can count on is change.
And that actually, I hadn't even really considered that. I think that makes so much sense, right? And I think you have such a good attitude and mindset about that. And things are changing literally like almost day to day, certainly week to week,
Oh,
right?
it does. It literally does. We can do one thing in AI today, and then tomorrow, oh, this is the way you do it now.
That's
And then the
right.
pricing, there's so many changes happening.
Yeah. Kind of, it is the Wild West, but also it's an adventure too,
It
right?
is. It has its exciting moments. It has things that it can do that are really fun and that we've embraced. One of the things too is that it's not just about, for us and for my team, it's not just about IT work, it's of doing IT with a purpose. So we have working in multifamily, working with affordable housing. We know that the people that we're working with are providing housing to communities all over the country. Some of those could be people that are homeless and they're providing a roof over someone's head, one of the basic
Yeah.
needs that we all have. And so we try to really keep that into perspective when we're doing our jobs every day.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. Really being mission driven. It's very exciting. All right. One last question for this nugget filled conversation that we have had today. Many leaders secretly battle with imposter syndrome, no matter how much success they've had. So this is really a two-part question for you. If in this iteration of Laura Hamilton, you are going to feel imposter syndrome, what situation is that likely to come up in? And then what do you do about it?
So it does come up because I didn't start out in this industry the traditional way. And so I don't have all these certifications and degrees to back up what my knowledge really is. And that's okay in my environment. But when I step out of my environment, do other people take me as seriously as they
Mm,
should because of my knowledge? And so there are times, it might even be just being on this podcast with you, where I feel like, what value do I bring to Kim's podcast? What am I bringing to the table that might help other people? And what I do in those situations is I do it scared.
I love that.
The only way
Yeah.
to get past it and the only way to get through that feeling is to do it anyway.
In a lot of ways, what I just said about having that learner's mindset or beginner's mindset, right? The fear is not a destination, it's just information, right? And the more that you do things and solve things, the better you're going to get at them,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Definitely repetitiveness does help you, but when it comes to certain that feeling that you get on the inside, it's like when you go on stage to talk and you've got those butterflies and you're unsure of yourself. And I'm sure singers have that when they go out to sing. They've got the butterflies and is my throat going to be good? Am I going to mess up? It's the
Hmm.
same thing. And so you just have to just power through that feeling and know
Yeah.
that there are people that will listen and will care.
Right. You know what? One sort of last thought here that you reminded me of is that so you said, oh, I don't have degrees and I don't have an educational background and all the certificates and so forth for what I am currently doing. And then, so that's your story, right? That people are going to
Right.
judge you about that. And in fact, here's what's so interesting about the stories because it's not necessarily untrue. They're
Right.
probably, you go to a conference or whatever, and you don't have five initials after your name. And there
Right.
are somebody comes up to you and says, hey, Laura, what school did you go to? And what degree do you have, right? And you can't, I don't know, I have a degree in English, right? It's not a credential. What is so interesting about that is the story that you tell yourself, right? And here's what it made me think of for myself. So, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I lost a bunch of weight, right? I lost 72 pounds. And I had been heavy really most of my adult life, right? And I remember being in a weight loss group. Okay. That it wasn't as much about food, it was like behavior management. And there was a woman in there that I would say looked thin, or at least the right weight for, right? Not heavy, right? And what's so interesting is that she had all these body image issues, right? And she had not been heavy, right? So, and that was the first time it occurred to me that, because I looked at her and I was like, wait a second, if this is all in my head, you can trust me, I never said any of this out
Right.
loud. But I'm like, why are you even here?
Right.
You look thin to me, right? But that was the first time I ever realized that the story you tell yourself is your reality,
That's right.
right?
That's right. Yeah, you have to change that channel in your head, and it's very difficult to do when the people around you, and that doesn't mean the people you work with, but in society, people that you deal with sometimes feed that as well. And so
Right.
to really have the confidence to not have imposter syndrome is very difficult.
That's right.
But there are situations where you don't have it at all and you feel great about what you're doing.
That's right.
Um, so I just, like I
Right.
said, if I'm scared, but I do other things that make me scared so that I'm prepared. And that sounds silly,
Oh,
but like my husband and I went zip lining, and I am terrified of heights and I have asthma, and I'm just like, this is not for me. But we jumped off that board and we went and we did it. And it's the things, or there's food that I really don't like, I'm going to taste it anyway because you never know, right? And so do things that scare you a little bit. Don't jump out of an airplane necessarily, but do something that scares you a little bit, and it'll help you deal with how you do that in situations involving
uh-huh.
your work as well.
I love that. And I think that is great advice. But I am going on the record to say I am not eating sea urchin anytime soon.
Well,
Okay?
there you go. There you go. It's
There you
on the
go.
record now.
Oh, Laura, this has been such a great conversation. There are just so many nuggets in here. And I just appreciate your thoughtful and I think really transparent answers. I think it's
Thank you
really
so
helpful.
much. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure to be here.
Yay, thank you. All right, friends, you have been listening to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom. Laura's contact information, and if you happen to be an investor and own lots of multifamily buildings, you can get in touch with her. For me, I would ask you to do two things. One is if you love this conversation, which of course you did, I would love for you to subscribe. That really helps us with our visibility and being able to share this great content with other people. And the second thing is, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It comes out once a week. It's got one thing in it, and there's always an action, right? There's always something that you can do, which I think is helpful. So, thank you again. This is Kim Miller-Hershon, Kim Miller-Hershon Coaching and Consulting with Lara Hamilton. Go out there and be a better human.
Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down